And then you so far so good, you think?
I think so.
And it's 11:30. I can't work on this. I gotta teach now.
I think you're good this time.
I was thinking about sharing the screen, though. Make sure the people outside there. I'm the only one. Oh no, there's two people, me and somebody else. Okay. Good. Hello, morning. We're still ongoing battle to understand wildlife management, correct? And you understand that leaving your program, you're more than likely to talk biology more than politics. Their own, I'm saying, because I open, you're the kind of very vocal, and you want to advocate and so on, and that's if it's in your field, go right ahead. Comes interdisciplinary and there's advanced programs like that, where you know you have the biology background and you want to do politics. That means the government will love you, because politicians rarely do biology. So suddenly you become so keep that in mind. But for the exam, for the core material for this class, and because that's basically the only one. Team will bring the data, multiple data observations, study on animals. You become the experts in that field. You're part of wildlife management. You understand why you're building a database. It has purpose. The purpose is primarily to monitor abundance on the animals, because that's always the issue. Too few or too many. And too few, the brown rat is too many. Therefore, there is I'm going to call it a situation. And then, yeah, you call Justin Trudeau and ask for a bit of a short study on brown rats or giant panda. I've had colleagues, and I never had a chance, but I've had colleagues, zoologists, mammalogists, carnivore lovers like me, who went, they were, you know, funded by National Geographic just to follow a team for 3 weeks in China, northern China, for panda. A lot of walking, few pandas, lots of bamboo. If you're not in bamboo, you're not looking in the right place. Yeah. All right. So, without further ado, I'm going to try to share a screen somehow. Hey, what? I was supposed to share that screen right here.
Yeah.
This one. That's more like it. We're still in chapter 1B. I'm very ashamed of myself here. It's terrible, but as I said, I mean, this is a large group. I know some of you, this is redundant with some technical ecology, but as I said, the refresher for everyone that material, whether you've seen it 3 times or 5 times, is because it's the basics for any kind of biology assessment, unless you're doing behavior, for example. So let's go deep. We're talking about the nitty-gritty of population abundance. What happens is your numbers vary over time, correct? Either increasing or decreasing. Also understand that the ministry would not exist if it wasn't for variations in deer abundance in Northern Ontario. So if the numbers were known, there would be one equation saying this is how many permits I give a year. I don't need ponds they're going to produce. And therefore, I don't need to make protections. I don't need to be worried about the population, and I don't need to restrict the number of permits and so on. So it's from year to year, they try their best, and in principle, ecology, I was showing a graph. Another side note here, showing that some of you might remember this, but the deer population responds to 3 years suddenly population contracts. Well, as biologists, we don't deal with climate too much. We're not a deer. We never thought, I don't know if you guys feel any different after 3 bad years, 3 bad winters, but the deer don't, right? So it's kind of novel. It's pretty simple. It's just don't put too many bad winters. So Northern Ontario is kind of rough, but just one bad year at a time, and then interspersed with favorable winters. All right. So I'm talking abundance again. Large topic because it depends on survival and reproduction. Survival number, we've seen that in life tables, after the exam for sure. You see that it's getting it really down to the nitty-gritty. The beauty with wildlife management, you don't consider the ecosystem, you're just there for that. My mythical wild boar. All Texas. Sad. Oh yeah, we're seeing a group this afternoon at 4 o'clock, so you're not done with the last person. This model, and let me go back just to warm up the audience on some of the material that we've seen so far, the kind of life table where it dissects the population to cohorts, age groups. Some animals live only 2 years. Some like a rabbit, for example, our social hair will not live much longer than 4 years. It's important to know what happens in colon. I want to see that at the exam. This is technical stuff about dividing a population. It removes the idea of talking about teenagers, for example, that's the name we give to a certain period of age, right? And elderly and so on, right? With that definitions for cohort. Same thing for wildlife. Depends how long the animal lives. I said that already. So if you're looking at the elephant, the range, the cohorts will be organized differently. Everybody gets that. There's no point in dividing in humans who live so long. We live for 85 years. There's no point in dividing a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. There's toddlers. Everybody knows what a toddler is. Very predictable, but it groups a couple of years together, right? So we do that, and even for life expectancy, we go by groups of 10 years. All right, so keep that in mind. Life table is a general idea where the entire population dissected by age, where each cohort, the life expectancy of each cohort is analyzed. Gives you a number of L for living, so LX, X for the particular cohort, DX for death, and QX for death as well. Just different computation depending if you're looking, for example, DX. I'm going to repeat this. So DX, this column right here, the calculation is always based on the initial cohort. It says right here. Therefore, DX will diminish because there are just a few elderly that are waiting to die in this population. Therefore, DX right here, even if I lose 5 of these guys, relative to the 530, sorry to say, even if they all die 100%, they're guaranteed to die because the squirrel doesn't live any longer. It still doesn't impact the population. Everybody gets that. So in other words, they're expensive whatsoever. So please don't bring that to the human situation, but they're sort of dispensable. Simply because they're just very few of them. If poor coyote decides to go only for the elderly, you can imagine that in wolf caribou situation, if they get only the elderly, how much are they impacting the population? The answer is there's fewer percentage of the population lives above 65 years old. Look at the retirement homes and look at the percentage. The elderly, of course, because our population diminishes the whole time. Therefore, of course, the elderly are a fraction of the entire population. All right, this is one way to look at it. I just looked at the elderly. And of course, I can look at the particular cohort that seem to have a QX. That is pretty strong. Notice that the QX can go back up. Notice how this comes down all invariably. This one varies per year, per cohort, sorry, per age group for a given year. So of course, you're analyzing that table at the exam, and you're certainly going to tell me that there's a 0.75 that seems to be a problem because it's pretty high. We're looking at death. I could read that as 75%, right? Well, sorry to say, but that's an age cohort that has a bit of a problem. It's like, and I don't mean to be racist, but it's like getting a Honda Civic to an 18. The likelihood of survival has just diminished quite a bit. So this is what happens right here. This group right here at 4 or 5 years old, for some reason, they're really targeted. These ones are going to die entirely. That's the 1.0. You see that, right? So I hope you can analyze this at the exam. Not doing the entire cohort. I'm not making the history of the entire. I'm trying to look for high or low numbers in the table. Just because if it's not uniform, obviously an age cohort is being targeted more than the other. And I see this one right here, the 4 or 5 years old, and of course we know this one already, right? But this is pretty high. That means that it could be senescence. That means the squirrel are just getting older. So possibly not run as fast and so on, and therefore get targeted by predators. I don't have the explanation. I just know that this group is sort of, if I have to conserve that species, that population, that I'd like to look into this one, this value right here. We know that the young ones, 0.7 is the second highest value. You see it on the table, top right. The 0.7 is high. So past that, you're gonna survive the first year in the nest. And imagine all kinds of species, crows, ravens, they all get into nest when it's May. There's all kinds of little critters in the holes. They all take turns. They all try. Woodpeckers will try. Raccoons will try, put their hand in there. Everybody's on it, even other squirrels get to squirrels. So, and of course, my favorite, marten. Raise your hand, marten. Anybody? This is not an acre. So wildlife. American marten. All right. So life tables, all kinds. This is just a repeat, just to show you that these variables are important for the exam because they come back. And age cohorts could vary depending on the life form I'm looking at. This one has has molds. So basically, it's really like getting up in the morning and your little brother has just turned into a teenager overnight, right? So it happens in humans, so we don't have that. We have years instead. These are larval stages right here for this particular animal. So they can be graphed. Again, you recognize the symbols. So QX and then LX. We did the analysis of this already, and that's where we were in material. So in summary, you have to know which life form you're looking at. So we're looking at a very broad spectrum here. Thank God it's mostly higher vertebrates, because fisheries is almost a separate topic because the approach is very different. It's a very different system. But birds and mammals will have this kind of strategy. So let's look quickly. For some reason, I see I was trying to dismiss the fish, and here I go on 3. Here you see the number. These are important, so they're called models. Model 1, 2, and 3. The third one looks like Nemo syndrome. I'm going to call it the Nemo syndrome. Just to make it sound so easy. So the Nemo syndrome, the female produces 2 million eggs to hold to keep only 1. In Nemo, the mother looks surprised. She shouldn't have. And there are just a bunch of predators waiting for the eggs. You know the turtles. If you know the turtles, you know they do the same thing. Smaller scale. Those 30 eggs to hopefully keep 1. Yeah. Alligators will do the same thing, although alligators just depend. Game all together. Try to approach a nest. But in turtles, pure hell. They excavate for 3 hours. They leave the place because they have to return to water for protection on the roadside. And at 11:35, one raccoon and then one skunk, and then the same raccoon comes back, and they're all excavated. Turtles are very vulnerable simply because they have very picky taste for nesting insects, like most of us. That makes them very vulnerable because they all gather in one good spot, the hot spot. One excavates, the next one excavates same area, so imagine the population can get targeted pretty fast when one raccoon can do the entire night. All right, so this is what you're looking at on the y-axis is LX, and right away that should ring a bell in your mind. I hope you can decipher the exam. Against stage on the x-axis, survival against age. So how does it go? Well, it seems early age. If I'm looking at the red line right here, it looks to me like early age, everybody's dead. I hope you can appreciate that because the survival goes from 1.0 because they were just born to barracuda, barracuda, barracuda. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go see the movie called Nemo. And it's so wrong that the only mistake is that barracuda will never go for eggs. It's incapable of going for that kind of stuff. So I'd rather see something sucking the bottom forever. Not a barracuda. It looked mean, eh? Yeah, I cried. So this is a strategy. It's called reproductive strategy. It works. Your sturgeon does the same thing. When you want caviar, you have 1 female. You can be 55 years old, guaranteed. You're counting 1 spawning event for 1 female in a million. 2-3 million eggs being dropped. So it's like having eternal diarrhea. Don't cite me on this. But basically, if you go to a fish pond where they breed the fish, you'll see how long it takes to expel all the eggs from a female taking a pickle by feeding species. So millions of eggs to hope to keep only 1 survival. After a little while, it looks like, I guess once the eggs are hatched, I guess the fry has some escape routes, right? Just like the same thing for alligators, the egg is vulnerable and suddenly the young can crawl around and hide. So different game altogether. So there, after a certain stage, the survival doesn't change much. You see that? You can see it mentioned that the exam. Number 2 is totally proportional. When everybody's affected in the same way, the young and the old are affected exactly in the same way. This is proportional. Survival is the same for every age group. And no, the answer is no. I don't have an example. Hard to imagine that the young would have to look exactly like the adult. No, possibly with a super protection system. Again, I'm thinking extreme like the elephants or muskox. You have an idea? Like where survival is like just when the young benefit to the same, they have the same chance of being taken as an old one, as a prime animal, and like kind of zooplankton, like one of whale possibly, yeah. And you see, we have to go away from wildlife, but nobody has wildlife management on zooplankton, unfortunately. So easy to get away from that material. So again, you gotta look at birds or mammals that have young that are just as capable or incapable as the old ones. So I'm thinking, of course, the strategy in many animals, such as I won't mention elephants because the young is pretty helpless, but all the hoofed animals produce young that can run in an hour. Everybody knows that, right? So these animals right there, this is known as a strategy. The female will keep a young until it has hooves on. She has to give birth to an animal that has hooves. She could have not wait so long. And she did. So she's really investing a lot, including risk at birth. I've seen a deer give birth to triplets. Whoa. Pretty risky. And within an hour, these animals can follow the herd. Right there, there's a net. The young ones have a net, right? They can run away. And they can probably get protected. Thing is, when I'm thinking wild beasts, water buffaloes, they run away. They stampede. The young get no protection whatsoever. If anything, they're going to get trampled by their own. Whereas if muskox, they stampede, they turn around, they make a formation, and they protect their young. Pretty extreme. Elephants will do that, but the animal is not on its feet to maybe quite as fast, right? So, all right. So, long story to talk about these models, which is the core material for the exam. So we're talking model 3 is where the survival of the young ones is very low. We've talked about 2 as hypothetical, you know, maybe when the environment targets every age group, maybe. And then 1 is more of a, it's called I'm going to write this down at some point. It's called a K strategy, capital K. You can type it in on Google Scholar and you'll find the papers on K strategy. It's a capital K strategy. And the 3 is called an R strategy. R as in small r strategy. Right? Very well known, very established, where we recognize that we can put an animal somewhere in between those 3 models. So I have a group of animals where the young ones are not surviving well. If in Nemo that female had invested in 1 egg, right? So the strategy is really there where the female invests a lot in reproduction, knowing actually kind of evaluation that to protect a few young, and it works. It works. It's a very old system where I'll make an egg. We'll make an egg. How long is going to be the pregnancy? Say a week. What happens after a week? I dropped the damn thing right on the ground. I'm not going to carry this for 40 weeks. Come on now. So very simple system, but the egg is very, I'm going to say minimal. Mitosis is not miraculous, you know. So after you sell when you make it in a week, I don't know, but that embryo is very small, so chances of survival are kind of slim. Whereas the extreme, of course, the horse is spectacular, the giraffe is spectacular, all the food animals, they get birth an animal that's just perfect shape. So the assembly line, that's the word I was looking for. The assembly line is protected with the body of the mother in that strategy. So the K strategy belongs to, and this is the one here, right on top. So the K strategy is where a few young are produced. They're well equipped. I'm going to say it like that. better well, but either behaviorally or morphologically better equipped to survive. So you, the giraffe, as I know. Somebody in the web enough to find a giraffe that gave birth to twins. Anyway. I didn't want to see that. That's gonna be worth it. I don't think so, right? Yeah.
I work with giraffes and it is incredibly rare, but twins do happen.
So
So there's only 50 documented cases of
Yeah.
it happening.
Thank you very much for mentioning that. So it does happen. Same thing for the triplets I've seen. I was in a zoo and we were called on, I was training in Wild. They called to film at 2 p.m. Look, visitors around that thing that gave birth to triplets, which is like possible, but so my point remains the same. This strategy is one that produces very few young, well equipped or well protected. All right. That means that in growing your population makes a bit of a difference. If you're looking at reestablishing a population and you know your survival is low in that species, obviously you're not looking at what the word am I looking for if I'm talking about the replacement cohort. Every year, let's say we're very seasonal here, so every year we produce a whole bunch of animals. What do you call that? Typically in the population, the number in terms of abundance. Yeah. Thank you very much. Recruitment. So that's to bring in the exam as well. It makes it very general. I don't care for the age group. It just means it's a replacing group, the fresh cohort, the freshman year. Replace them when they're leaving. All right. The recruitment rate, that's how we measure it, right? So how many survive after first year and so on, right? That recruitment rate is absolutely vital because we know at the other end of the assembly line, there's a disassembly. Your animals will die, they won't. So you got to know which where your animal sits. Funny enough, you know, we're thinking of a bunch of vertebrates. We know we're already in the higher vertebrates. I was talking about fish over here, talking about the elephant here, which is the new model, new kid around the block. Super complex, super fancy, longevity and so on. Very special strategies that it puts it to danger against human, but fantastic animal. There's not an amoeba that was looking anywhere here. Just more cells, more systems, more organs, and so on. So that the animal can be homeotherm, social, vocalization, emotions, and so on. So very advanced animal. So strategy goes that from primitive to advanced, this is the tendency. That means that the origin of reproduction was to produce a whole bunch of very simple units. The eggs, fish eggs. I insist on simple. My example is very clear, I think, on that. And I was going to say, because the 4-tier-5, that even within carnivores, if you think that the wolf is advanced and it protects its young and, you know, regulates the group, there's some carnivores who are different, and raise your hand. So the small weasels, if you know them, Merriman or pit weasel, or pink weasel, those little things are just as vicious as the next wolf, just in a smaller scale. They say 30 times as vicious as a lion for bite force. Interesting. But these guys go into local extinction. No food, no gold. Food, bunch of kids. The fathers will reproduce they will come back to mate their own daughters. But they're stupid, right? So guys, so I had myself, I was good in front of weasels for $4,200, so I see them. Yeah, okay, maniac, I know, you don't have to go there, all right. So, my argument, if I come on some paper and I want to set the basis for the weasels, I'm going to try to sell the idea that they're vulnerable. But the food, whoa, they go. Whereas other animals will sustain themselves, migration and so on, and other strategies. So my weasels are here. So it's very relative. See that? Survival, produce lots of young, and they can't care for tens. They release them and they all die. So Martin will do somewhat the same thing. So the reproduction regulation is not exactly there. So you're looking at these three models, very dramatic difference between the 1 and the 3, the ones I want you to remember. You can look at survival real example cases. To the left, we're looking at some finch. And you see that the survival drops in the egg level. So if I want to conserve that species, obviously, I need to take care of the egg. You've ever seen nest boxes around? That's the purpose. Is to try to provide optimal habitat for the female. It's always trying to protect to some degree, right? I mean, Nemo, there was a piece of cake. So, if the habitat is poor, they don't find the optimal, they find the suboptimal, and they don't. That's what seems to happen with that finch. You see that because the curve is very steep at the beginning at an early age. And this one is the opposite. So if you expect mortality in the I call this a red deer. Same thing as an elk. Anybody raise your hands? Elk. Wapiti, same thing, right? And in England or Scotland, they have the red deer, which is the same species, just they don't breed together, therefore they're called different. You appreciate that this is more of a case strategist, good answer at the exam. Case strategist because it protects the young, and if mortality occurs, it will be with age to some degree. This could be part of the hunting, for example, where an age class is being targeted, by permits. Say, oh, you need raise your hand for deer hunting. Anybody? I gotta know the group at some point. So I got only one person. I see at least one. I mean, not going through any details about how we proceed here locally, because I mean the story is but basically when you size the animal you're taking, and you're likely to take the stag more than the doe because you want to protect your population, I suppose, and it varies from year to year, but different system to allocate how many permits of how many males you'll take from the population. They go, they're measured by the size of the rack, the antlers, and goes by points. I think you're familiar with this. So 6 points, 8 points will give you the size of the animal more. And this could happen, this animal right here. This population is being managed. You can imagine Scotland being an island, populated, heavily populated island, very cultivated island. And that little part that has right here, you got to count. So much so, I went to Austria and I realized that every hunter has a history in the village, just one village where they consider how many animals they kill. And every animal is going to take has a tag on the ear. They tag the wildlife. That means they know exactly how many they got, right? They just look at the database, look at the bottom 16, 159, so we got here to work with. They almost tag the trees up there. That's how severe the situation is for space. We're very fortunate to have a bit of chaos, like a black bear coming off campus, that kind of chaos. Well, No more, so, no more bears in town in Europe anywhere. All right. So enough with that. Well, you notice that it's moving forward because suddenly we're looking not only at survival and death of the existing forest, we're looking at new incoming. So we're building the population from survival, the adults, and how many kids will they get. You understand, take both in order to have a population, survival and reproduction. So B, LXBX, and I'm not going to any kind of calculations. You could do that on your own, and it's not that complicated. Is obviously a combination of survival of the, say, the females in the group here to the number of young that they produce each. I'd like to dissect the idea myself. For me, it's interesting because I see which females give more young. Makes sense, right? That there would be an age group in the female that produces more young. They're prime, they're better shape. That's the middle cohorts right here. But yeah. But this, I see the survival is not that great on some of them. So it's a combination of survival, right? Vulnerability of that age class combined with how many young, if they survive, how many young they will produce. LXBX, it gives you a rate of replacement. I talked about recruitment comes in the population, some will die. So, you know, input, output, if you like. And the balance will give you a rate. And obviously, a rate of, they call it zero birth, zero mortality. Lots of that in industrialized countries. We talked about this. I mean, birth control doing a damage to excuse me. So basically, if you bring in 100 new young and you lose 100 elderly, you're at zero mortality. That means no increase in the population. Right here, no increase in the population gives you 100 over 100 is 1.00. Obviously, if your numerator is the birth and they decline, obviously you're getting below zero. You all see that. So zero here represents the time zero, the initial observation, because obviously at some point you will want to come back next year and compare if your numbers have come up. That's why you have an R0, you'll have an R1, R2, R3, depending on the species you're looking at. I'm not using this at all. So this is slide 34, I believe. Reading this right. And obviously you want to lead to a projection. So based on 5 years, right? You can admit there is some kind of a trend. That's what people do all the time. That's how banks adjust their interest rates is based on the projection of. So same idea with these animals. I notice in that table, and you see that I'm absolutely not going through the calculation whatsoever. It's a theory class right here. This is a lab exercise we might do eventually in some other year. I see the lambda, the same thing as the R you just seen. The lambda is exactly the same thing. A lambda of 1 means the population is not growing and it's not decreasing. So it's 1.0. Obviously, in this table right here, I'm looking at, I guess, a few numbers right here for abundance, but I'm interested in this right here. I notice this population is still increasing. You notice that? That's 1.20. That's what I want to see at the exam. I show the table. I want to see what comes out of it. This, if you know what lambda means, it means that the birth over that over 1.0 That's what I'm seeing in this squirrel population. Because the 4th-year class, of course, I expect only pure excellence. You can notice in that table that there's 10 columns. They represent 8 years of observations. Sorry. Yeah. That's age. Group published, but 10 years of observation on the same population. So a sequence of 10 years. It's still growing. Or as I know, this population is not that. You see a decline in the left? No. So of course it went pretty crazy at first at 1.27. Woo, big deal. So female, one female will give two quadruplets, oaks, lots of food, no fight with the neighbors. This population is still growing after 10 years. That's my conclusion on this. Some population might stabilize, and that's when you're. This is the percentage of the say population composition. How many are there of the 0 to 1? How many are there of the 1 to 2s and so on? The young are always dominant in this group. I can see that, and I'm done with this analysis, but I can certainly observe that right here on this year, I have, of course, a colony starting. You see that? Also young given by 1-year-olds that came in and reproduced like mad. Of course, they got older, so suddenly, but some of them died, so suddenly they're not at 33% of the population, they're at 13. And they're supplanted by the recruitment, right? Which is at 71%. Ooh, big deal. So it looks pretty steady, no matter what in this group right here until the age 5. This group is producing a lot of young, so that's dominant in that table. But I want to finish by observing that at the age of 5, I got no more changes. It's balanced. That age distribution will not change anymore. I'm all at 70% composition, no matter how many kids are born. It's always balanced at 70%. So I'm not changing the age distribution anymore. You all see that? The numbers are identical after the age, 5. So that should renew itself, basically, right? This is the lambda exposed again, so I'm getting technical. As I already mentioned, some other place, this is not really a density at n is just an abundance. So some textbooks are worth returning to the editor. Just saying, doing some politics. So that should read as population abundance. If you're working on an island, it's possible. You know exactly where it ends, and that's your location. And for that island, you measure, say, mice abundance, mouse abundance. So, and you've seen already that density is measured by area of linear area or volume. This shows 4 different population with different lambdas. So I'm looking at the abundance, and the lambdas at 1.51. I know for a fact that birds are coming in faster than the deaths. Obviously, the population is growing. This one's growing pretty fast. It's obviously exponential. I hope you understand that how the exponential works, obviously, because you might give birth to a daughter who will give birth herself, and you're still alive, therefore you have a population. Right. So that's how you get exponential increase rate, because you pile up the young ones and you don't. There's enough resources for the elderly to survive. So population increases exponentially. This one as well, just lower. It depends on recruitment rate that I mentioned that. Some species reproduce faster. Think of rabbits compared to any other animal. You give them the food, They will do it. Yeah. Very, very fast. They can recolonize like no one. Oh, look, beautiful image right here. Who put that in? Raise your hand if you put that slide in. This one is barely making it. So you're looking at species who have problems reproducing. In terms of wildlife management, looking at cheetahs, for example, we've got the hardest time producing young ones. For the panda, known as well for having, well, the cats in general. Not all of them are endangered threatened, but if it happens to be a threatened cat, such as a snow leopard in Quebec, so bringing it to captivity, you still have problems keeping the young. So they reproduce really badly. I once read somewhere that it takes something like 75 matings for a female to get fertilized by a male in a single season. So a lot of work. This one is decreasing. I'd be worried about the last one. At 0.887, I don't need the graph at the exam. I can show you those values. And you'll remember the line that shows an increase or decrease, right? Thank you. This, we're going further into a realistic situation where there's a limit to the exponential growth. Here's a realistic case, and somewhere in here I have what you've probably seen already, this kind of a graph, very universal, showing what's expected of almost any population. As long as it can give birth, survive, this is the kind of model you should be expecting. So I'm going to take a couple minutes to set the basis for the exam. This represents we've seen the exponential, right? This is called a logistic model. Logistic refers to anything that makes you capable of doing stuff. Logistic, the computer's logistic, the table logistic, sitting is logistics. So the same thing for an animal. Food is primary. You would think of food as being the logistics. It happens that food is not infinite. Cannot have infinite growth of your population. If it's a deer population, it will meet its end at some point. Very well known in deer, so much so that almost every provincial government in Canada is sending teams of technicians in the field all winter to feed the deer. Because food is short. Hunters still want the deer. They want to see in April, they don't want to see carcasses laying down all over either. So tricky situation, how many deer should you keep? It doesn't matter, but some species are, I would say, stupid. They forget that they're going to run out. Stuck in a close apocalypse, you got 20 cans of food and you eat them all overnight. So many animals will do that. They don't see it coming collectively, and they exceed what is called a carrying capacity. So obviously core information here. In the logistic growth, you recognize there's a limit to some resource. I mentioned food because it's primary. It could be nesting cavities for woodpeckers. It's a resource. That resource is always at some point never infinite. Therefore, it will run out at some point. So population growth versus resources available. This will cap the number of animals that are reproducing or surviving. Again, your abundance depends on the number of animals surviving, the animal, and the number of young producers. So there is I can think of a couple of strategies here for the numbers. Only number, it's not in the head of the deer. It's just I like to measure the number. That would say shit will happen. understand what kind of problems they're getting into. Two possibilities. One, the adults will not survive. The adults will not survive. Your numbers are coming down, adjusting to this, adjusting around this, right? Because you reach the top, your cedar is really limiting. You gotta run more, you gotta walk more, you gotta climb more areas and so on, you gotta risk yourself into wolf territory, find cedar, stuff like that. My buddy in Sherbrooke, Quebec, is fighting deer who are coming, to eat his beautiful ornamental cedar. So, risky situation, but he does have a possible. So, second strategy will be, of course, to eliminate the birds. So that's called abortion, for example, so that's another situation possible. Of course, you can find a combination. So I mentioned survival will limit your increase. I'm here. At this point in the population, and I need to explain why the numbers do not increase anymore. It's either survival of adults is down. We see that in deer every year. It's actually taking their skidoos and coming to bush because if the winter has been bad, or eliminating reproduction altogether. So we're talking not coming in estrus. So bad physical condition, yeah, they survive by bad condition, therefore they might not reproduce. Or the fawn will not survive because the female doesn't give enough milk because there's not enough feed, for example. All right. So this is, of course, what happens to the numbers that are represented on the y-axis right here. So you recognize these two, obviously, different portion of the logistics shown. It's not showing the carrying capacity because this population is still increasing. As we go down eventually towards realistic scenarios, not every population will recognize as soon as you add, say, 101 animal, 101 Dalmatians, another great movie. But you add one animal in the population. It's not true that collectively people will say, "Oh, we pushed it. We're way beyond. We don't have the resources for that one." And then they can do the plank on the ship. Raise your head if you've heard of that. Want to plank? Anybody? I don't think that, but the ship is limited for resources. You have to regulate your population. That was once a pirate. So, same idea. There's no population that collectively has the collective to understand that humans are the best example for chaos because all we care about is protecting our humanity. Of course, like I'm not going to sacrifice my kids, my 18 kids, just to help a Chinese person get so it becomes very selfish. Nothing new about this. Darwin has said it before. Dawkins, he wrote something on the selfish gene. You're all phenotypes for your genotypes. Your purpose as a body is to reproduce, survive, reproduce. That's your fitness. You were born like that. Two for every animal, everybody for themselves. In population of deer, everybody says, "Oh, okay, food is not so great this year, right? Amanda, yeah. All right, so Lisa, we're going to give birth to just a few less facility costs and treatment." So, in reality, and that's in short, no population sticks to their carrying capacity forever. No population will stick to their carrying capacity that's the mathematical projection. Exactly. Therefore, it will move around with carrying capacity. This is one example of a sort of a smart population that recognizes the amount of resources right here. And says, oh, where's my neighbor? Oh, he just sold, he moved to Toronto, so I'm gonna take over, so I've got more resources, so I'm gonna have to increase my family right away. And suddenly, whoop, I'm over here. Well, no more houses available. So therefore, population stays put. And then eventually some people move out. It's too tight. Resources are limiting, right? This is your K or your carrying capacity. So some individuals leave or die, and then it picks up again. So you see the point is the same. There's variations around the carrying capacity. The idea is to try to summarize. This is probably the best I've seen. For summarizing, of course, we're going to get back to realistic cases like this, but of course, any of you recognize this model that summarizes all kinds of scenarios. I'm going to take a breather and remind you that wherever I see an increase in the graph, it's because lambda went above 1.0. The survival, lots of babies. It happens that you're likely to see a lambda above 1 if you're able to carry capacity. And here we are, and let's say all kinds of situation. The first one is known already. I don't have to describe this again. This is the theoretical logistic growth expected exponential with a plateau at carrying capacity. The chaos species, I'm going to call them just the species. In wildlife, it could be birds, could be mammals. I don't know them all. I don't fit that model. But it's not too shabby. It's just that the biologists can't predict really. That's what's called chaos. The projection is unpredictable. The projection is unstable. I cannot predict how many animals I'll have next year, so it's chaotic. And this is illustrated by the peaks that are varying height. You see that? The overabundance is really high here. Population turn around and say, let's all die, let's do a collective poisoning. And they went down. They said, oh, I think we overdid it. There's more cans in the back. We hadn't looked in the storage room correctly, so let's make babies. Here they go. Well, getting short on cans in the place. The habitat getting poor again, so they adjust again, but differently from the first time. So you're a biologist looking at that. That's pure health. So chaos is one possibility. So of course, you come in the ministry, new job, and the guy before you worked 30 years monitoring population level. This is the kind of scenario you're not hoping for, but that you could detect. You're going to notice that population go over carrying capacity some area. This one is the nice one. It stable limit cycle is a technical term for this, where your animals are extremely predictable. The word stable already is it's repetitive, it's limited. Over again, periodically. Two known cases, I'm sure there's more here, but cases of species that is that kind of pattern. It's great. It's new. I wanted to put the material, I had to ask you, I put this graph at the exam and tried to show me where do you think the carrying capacity goes. I hope you appreciate that this animal can only have carrying capacity right here. There's no way that it reaches. Like, I can't put carrying capacity up here. Why is the population fraction? I don't explain why. So obviously these poor little thing. It's coming. So let's make babies. Oh, I'll make 12 this time. But 13. Let's push it. You know, they're talking to each other, so they way overdo it, they ruin their own habitat. They're super vulnerable to predation. It crashes, and then suddenly the post-apocalypse animals turn around and say, oh, hold on. Nobody around, let's make babies. So this is known as a very textbook material of the 10-year cycle in social care. Some being very specific, so it's not like it's been documented anywhere on any species. So the 10-year cycle, so steady. Been documented just for like one of them simply because the love affair with the lynx. So that kind of pattern as well because the love goes in both ways. So the lemming it does the same thing because it's the trait to Arctic fox, and you're looking at the place where the odd polar bear will step on the lemming, but otherwise they often are very good. Lemming for a polar bear. He will not spend the time. But the Arctic fox love these guys, so they have a cycle into predation. They also ruin their own habitat. They've been known to even migrate just because they have this stampede. So to this day, I have to confirm this. I have a cartoon somewhere showing massive displacement of population. So they start going, and it's a one-way ticket. Makes sense just to recolonize a fresh area. Almost like they go self-instinct. They just took everything out of the food basics. No more. That's it. Gone. Gonna move to another area. So this was in C, and in D you have the smart population, the ones that can really adjust finally to the resources. Less browsing will give definitely an effect on the reproduction, or I think a slight increase right here if I'm looking at anything below this carrying capacity. Anything below, notice the probably picks up over the carrying capacity right away, but not very far. And depth is of course key. It means that over time population will adjust to the carrying capacity. Again, the story behind it is very complex. Try to keep in mind that the key is about the birth rate. So that's the birth and survival. So those two live. We could get to more complex, and that's almost beyond biology. When we think of migration, so emigration and immigration, those two factors, of course, will make a big difference here as well. Turn around, you browse, I'm gonna give birth. So, well, I mean, some of the secret is a little low here, I'm gonna move out. That's population regulation as well. So I just added a new factor here. And spatial. At a given time, the population feels too crowded. They tend to space themselves, therefore an animal will leave the population, and maybe that cell, the adjustment is made. So of course it's case by case, species by species. I'm going to take 2 more minutes to talk about this one because it's of course very dramatic. This is where you have a crash in the population. It's a story by Stoll on population ecology and so forth. Obviously, you recognize that the carrying capacity, the population exploded over abundance right here. You can think of wild rabbits in Australia. They say, oh my God, galore, everything is nice. And suddenly it's covered with rabbits, and they transmit the diseases to each other, and the population will regulate itself into a crash, possibly. Australia is hoping for a crash. Quite often the entire graph is not rabbit. You understand that? Because there is no recovery. We just shown that the rabbit is one kind of species that are stable with the cycle, right? I mean, a rabbit is a rabbit. They all reproduce the same way. In 3 weeks with food, they will produce 10 kids that survive very well, lots of milk and so on, and growth rate super fast, they reproduce fast. The fathers might mate with their daughters as well in rabbits. I'm not entirely sure, but that's a possibility. Therefore, the population is booming. In this case, I would cite the cheetah more than anything else right here. You're looking at population that's been persecuted. Even the gray wolf in Canada has done better for picking up, recovering after persecution. Persecution, in my mind, is we'll get after 99% of the population. That's persecution. Eradication, 100. So let's play on the word. Persecution is really, it's more than harassment. Harassment is just disturbing your peace. You know, if you drive your ATVs to bison herd every day, you're gonna exhaust them, that's harassment. But persecution is obviously taking animals and not 100%. Eradication. So many predators, we felt that for any kind of reason that they were desirable, maybe for the pelt, for trade, for all kinds of reasons. Plus, combined with a harsh environment, the lion is a problem for the cheetah. And the fact that they're cats and they have to mate forever, and there's a chance of the sperm meeting the ovum, slimmer in that. So reproduction is very low, so population might have been almost near extirpation or eradication, and then it doesn't pick up again. You can write down, and I'm gonna stop right here. Write down it's called a bottleneck. It's called a bottleneck. Repeat this, bottleneck. So it's when your gene pool gets too small so that your kids will survive well. Like reconstructing humans out of I watched 2 minutes back. Watching the both the apocalypse humans being recolonized, starting with 3-eyed people. Start. If you look at it, and of course I'm giving a dramatic example about the gene pool. If you have 6 individuals are that one formation, 3-eyed cheetah, think of anything, it's a bad start. So that's what happens in many populations that we've affected, either directly or indirectly. They crash and they do not pick up again. So we have strategies for that, but that's a possibility. You have to write to it as a biologist and say, sorry, we have to move in some animals, reproduction. Thanks for your attention. And we'll see you very soon.